Hello, everyone, and welcome along to your Rabble Extra Show, brought to you by the Rangers Rabble podcast. It's Wednesday night. It's not Thursday night that we normally do the Rabble Extra. It's a Wednesday night this week. My name's Stuart, and I'm hosting for this wee chat about all things Rangers. We'll touch on last night's game. Now that the dust is settled, what are we thinking about the performance? Looking a bit ahead to the Morton game, and also a bit of PSV next week, and also maybe just having a wee bit of chat. There's some money into the coffers last night, so let's see whether or not that we think the manager might be able to go out and bring some players in. So we'll have a wee chat. Obviously, put your comments in, and we'll have a look at them as well. Joining me tonight is, first of all, Richie. Richie, how are we?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Stuart. Yeah, sort of recovered / sort of calmed down after yesterday's first half, and I'm normally quite sort of middle of the road, as you know. But yeah, I found myself getting a little bit more sort of worked up than usual. But yeah, all good now, and looking forward to picking the bones out of it this evening.
Yeah, we might touch on a wee bit of the emotions that seem to be going on in the Rangers support at the moment. I know we touched a bit on that last week, but and also joining us is Scott Kerr. How are we?
I'm alright, Stuart. I'm alright. I only seen the second half last night because I didn't finish work till late. So I didn't really have any negative thoughts get through my mind. Unlike the rest of them, but I think Richie been in the Rabble chat too long, he's caught the bad bug, hasn't he?
Absolutely. For those listening, the Podders chat last night was on fire, particularly during that first half. There was some interesting views taking place, and I know last night the kind of the post match show, certainly the comments were on fire from folk listening in. So, Richie, I'll come to you. Obviously, I know Scott did the Rabble Daily today, so he's had a bit of an opportunity to speak about the game. But I'll come to you first then. Look, it's job done. That's the main thing. At the end of the day, we had to get through that tie. I think it would have been a real disappointment if we hadn't beaten a team such as Servette. I think we should be beating a team of that stature any time we're playing them. I think it was important that for the manager as well to get a kind of a big result as such. That's maybe something that he hasn't had since he became the manager. So like I say, we'll go on to talk about the kind of maybe some more of the aspects of the game, but overall it's job done.
Yeah, absolutely, and that should be the sort of overriding feeling, I think, after the game. I mean, I went into the game feeling pretty relaxed, obviously taking a slender advantage over there. I mean, it wasn't a case of underestimating the opposition, but I think it's fair to say, as you suggest, that we should be, if we're anywhere near up to where we ought to be playing, then we should be making fairly light work of these sides. And it didn't prove to be the case for the whole game. But actually, yeah, when all's, I think Scott said it on the daily update, when all's said and done, nobody remembers the performances. It's a victory against Servette. We're through to the final knockout tie against our old foes, PSV, and yeah, all in all, good night's work. And I can see as much as you don't sort of, there's elements of the first half that clearly could have been much better, but I think you can take a lot from the response, because that must have been quite an uncomfortable halftime talk for Beale and the players. And I really like the way that they sort of bounced back. I was encouraged by that response, because it could have been quite different. We saw Servette gaining confidence massively after a shaky opening 10-15 minutes, and if they'd have built upon that in the second half, and then if they had been able to get another goal, you could see that we'd be absolutely banging trouble. And then we're talking about laughing a little bit, joking about some of the negative reactions, but when you think about obviously comments after Killy, largely justified, There were complaints after the first leg against Servette that we were unable to build upon the advantage when they went down to 10 men. And then there were some complaints about the sort of 65, 75 minutes of the Livy game as well. So you can only really imagine how toxic things would have become if we'd have been sort of dumped out at this stage, albeit to play group stage Europa League football, which isn't the worst thing in the world by any means, but it would just kind of the pressure that Bale's already under would have just intensified, and I don't think it would have done the players any favors at all in terms of trying to build confidence and trying to build a style of play that Bale's wanting to bring into the side. So yeah, for all those reasons, it's job done, and of course we're going to be facing a much stiffer task next week. But I also think there's a sort of a slight danger of overestimating this side. I mean, it's not like we're not going into one of those Champions League ties where we're against like genuine premium European opposition. I think like they might justify slight favoritism, and they might well go on and win. But I don't think that we need to be too sort of put off by this idea that they've considerably strengthened. I think we've got a really good chance, and it'll be a really good acid test for where the team's at the moment. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm genuinely really excited to see how we get on. We've got another game in between to build a little bit more. And yeah, overall positive from last night. You've got to take the positives.
Yeah, Scott, I mean, let's say we will touch on the kind of upcoming PSV game, but I actually thought we started the game pretty well last night. We were playing in the right areas of the pitch. We kind of had them penned in. They were struggling to get out, and then it almost seemed that the game turned a wee bit where they managed to exploit a bit of space. They played it into their big striker, a nice wee flick, and they've got a midfield runner who's managed to kind of lose Servette or Jack, and he's then driving straight through the middle of their defence. But that's why we've signed Jack Butland, isn't it? He's came, although he hasn't played a lot of football, he has a pedigree. You don't win 9 caps for England if you're not a very good goalkeeper. And yes, goalkeepers need to make big saves, but he's done that at a big time in the game, because although we went on to lose the opening goal, I think losing a goal that early could have caused us real problems. And I thought just the way he stayed big and then spread himself to make that save, it was vitally important. And I think an important point from him as well, because I think it's the first, although he's made some decent saves, I think that's the first one that the fans have really went, oh yeah, right, okay, we can see what we've actually bought here.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I thought Jack Button, before he even made any saves at all, before he even put the game, I thought it was a terrific signing for Rangers. I didn't think we would get him just because of finances, but we managed to bring him up to Scotland and play for us. And I think that's a big thing, because Jack Butland's a guy, yeah, he's not played a lot of football in the last couple of years, as we know, but if he's out there in the free market, he'll overpick our clubs. Even at number 2 at a Premiership club, and he can get in a lot more money than he earns in Glasgow. But and I'm not saying he's not earning any money in Glasgow. He's out on a pittance, but he's earning a good wage at Rangers. But you know what I mean? A lot of players go where the money is, and Jack's decided, no, I've done that. I want to start playing games again. I want to show people I'm still a good goalkeeper. So I was delighted when we got him signed up, and he'll make any saves out of the season because he's a quality goalkeeper. We all know that. He just needed somebody to believe in him again. A bit like Toy Cantwell, to be honest with you, who I thought last night was tremendous. I just feel we're analysing this team too much because of the way we started the season. See, if we didn't get beat the first game of the season, it wouldn't have been as bad. But because we lost the first 3 points, the fans they're scared, they're desperate, they're impatient, they're all different things. Because as you used to know, if you go any further behind them, it's difficult to claw points back in the SPL because they don't lose many games. Even when they play poor, they don't lose many. And we struggle at times. So I think everybody got on the back foot when we lost at Kilmarnock. The performances haven't been as bad. Apart from Colour, they've not been as bad as some people are saying. Yeah, it could be better, don't get me wrong, but you can't judge a lot of our new signings on this early in the season. I don't care what anybody says. Judging somebody 90 minutes of football's harsh. Very harsh, because some of these strikers we brought in, I mean, I've seen some comments today on both of them are basically shite, and you're like, they're just some. Listen, they're not all going to probably end up making the Rangers. Some might go away next season or whatever, but they're no bad footballers. Some might need time to settle. I mean, you're still old enough to know, like myself, when Big Haley signed, it took him over a season to settle.
Yeah.
But back then, that was before social media and paranoia set him. We gave him a chance. Look at Alan McCoy as well. Stuart McNally came to Rangers and he missed chance after chance. But he never had. He would go up there and try and get another chance. That's what I said this morning about Danilo. Yeah, he missed that chance last night. He probably, if he looks back and he gets another chance, I would put it away. But it's getting in the positions. If he can still get in the positions in the next game, then he's no phased by it. That's how he reacts to this. So I'm happy with the boys he's brought in. The only downside I've seen this far this season as a manager, I feel he doesn't know his best 11, and I feel he doesn't know his best tactics. I feel he's chopping and changing a wee bit throughout games and with players, because I might have 11 players on a bit of paper he's wrote down saying that's my favourite 11, that's who I want to go with. But there's guys out there who maybe come up and say to him, or even showed him in the park, and he says, I can't leave him out. I can't leave him out. Like, we've all heard about the Campbell stuff pre-season when he wasn't too happy when they brought in Lammers, and he's getting moved further deeper now. I know people say he can play whatever, but to me, Todd's better further forward. You've seen the build-up play with Dessers in the second half. You've seen the link-up play he does with other players, especially Raskin. And Todd's a threat. It doesn't matter who we're playing. It could be a Premiership team, it could be a European team, it could be anybody, but Todd will be a threat because he's that quality of football player. And when he's further forward, he does drop back when we're defending and help out. But that's where we get to best him, further forward. And I think that's Bill's problem. He's signed too many light players. And I think he's struggling where to fit them in.
Richie, on that then, so as the first half progressed, yeah, let's be honest, some of Rangers' possession wasn't good enough. We were turning over the ball far too much. I think there was clear evidence to know that they were able to get out too easy, and yeah, I may have said at the start, Rangers should be beating a team like Servette. That's probably been a bit hard. Servette are in the Champions League, right? They're there, so that they've got qualities. You don't play at that level if you're not, and if you give teams too much space, then you cause yourself bother. So Scott's mentioned, yeah, we should have equalised. Danilo's got that chance. I think Neil McCann summed it up really well in the half time. You've got to focus on the connection there. You've got to make sure that your ankle's strong, you're over the ball. It's just about making good contact, and he's not done that. We then have an instant right at the tail end where again Butland makes a really good save. We find ourselves playing a really ridiculous high line. Me and you, Rich, actually had a conversation today about Aston Villa's really ridiculous high line in the EPL. It reminded me of that, and Barisic obviously gets a lot of criticism in that incident, but actually I feel a bit sorry for him because Goldson, I'm not really sure what Goldson's doing with the initial header, and then Suter makes the move to play offside. If Barisic is 3 yards behind him and plays that guy onside, then Barisic is absolutely at fault. I think Barisic is thinking, I need to stay and keep the line of the defence the same. And it turns out the guy's actually still in his own half, so wouldn't have been offside anyway. I just think there was a lot of incidents and a lot of issues within that period of play. But I was, like say, your chat, and I'm sure your social media, etc., was kind of exploding with how poor Rangers were. I don't disagree with the fact that our possession and maybe our formation wasn't good enough, but I was still relatively relaxed because I felt at half time the manager had an opportunity to change things, and when we did get the ball and we did use it, we were finding acres of space, and I thought there was real opportunities for us to exploit that. And the manager was taking some criticism. Scott's talked about the manager there. I think he's due a bit of credit here because he did make tweaks at half time, which I think played a pivotal part in allowing us to then win the game. So he's altered the midfield. He's put Raskin, he's stretched that, so Raskin's went further left, Sventes's went further right. Cantwell just dropped, going 2 up top, and Cantwell in behind, stopped their their avenues of being able to play out. So I think there was lots of cries for let's make changes, we need personnel changes. Actually, the manager's done a decent job by just tweaking things, which has then allowed what was, I thought, a very decent second half performance to transpire.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he deserves a lot of credit because, as I said before in my opening summary, that can't have been a very easy halftime talk. I know that's what he's here to do, but certainly, like whether you're arguing that the entire team needs to be put in the bin or you're saying things aren't quite good enough, I think everyone can agree it probably wasn't the half that Beale and the players wanted or that they planned for. And yeah, that was a really difficult position being behind in the game. And we did look much better in the second half. We played much higher up the park. We retained possession better. We were able to take control of the game that way. And it was only really in our passive play in the first half that allowed Servette to gain confidence, because those opening 10 minutes, like they were playing a really static low block. They looked incredibly nervous. They weren't dealing with balls in and around the box at all. They were like really kind of waiting for play to unfold. And it was only when they had a couple of breaks and they suddenly realized that, like, actually it's not too difficult here. If we have a couple of runners either side, we can get right up the pitch, and like it seems like parting like the Red Sea almost, and they seem to gain a lot of confidence from that, and then it gets the crowd up as well. But we got control of the game again in the second half, and it was largely comfortable. I don't think I was sort of had a little moan at half time. I was just a little bit disappointed with the way it was going, but I wasn't sort of meaning to advocate that the whole thing's a mess and the manager needs to go. I think everybody talks about a lack of a system and they don't know what they're seeing, but I think there's a lot of individual errors as well that people don't really sort of call out. It all seems to be like, oh, to do with our style of play, but that there are occasions where there's just players that are getting used to what they're doing, getting up to speed at this time of the season, and they're making some errors. And I said it on Sunday evening, and I know it's not the most popular opinion, but I will stand by it. Like, if you sign a player between 3 and 5 million, you can't expect a goal a game. I just don't think that's realistic, and you can't expect that they're going to convert like 85-90% of their chances. It just wouldn't happen, or else they wouldn't be available for that kind of money, unless there's some kind of other scenario like where we've seen with the likes of Cantwell, where there's been some personal circumstances, or they find themselves out of favour at a club for reasons other than just on the park. So I'm quite realistic about what to expect, I think, from some of the new signings, but at the same time you do want them to progress and gain in confidence, and I think that's when we'll see some better performances. But it was interesting for me, like, I think on 2 or 3 occasions Beale's mentioned us being too passive, and he's always used that term passive, and it was definitely true of the first half. It's just kind of like not taking the game by the scruff of the neck, letting things materialize around you. He mentioned the little taps and flicks that we were trying, but it wasn't really with any kind of intensity or like proper desire or maybe a belief that they were going to come off. Whereas in the second half, we were able to show our quality, and I would much prefer to focus on the way that we were able to respond to that initial sort of adversity in the first half, rather than looking at the fact that Danilo should have scored. That's fine. We can all look at the freeze frame, and like it's like people have done with Sakala on so many occasions. You look at the freeze frame and it looks awful, doesn't it? But the ball was bouncing at an awkward angle. I'm not suggesting that it was a particularly difficult chance, but these things do happen. It would have been really great for him and the team, obviously, if he could have just converted that, because I think we could have really sort of gone on and it could have been even more comfortable. But at the same time, I don't think it's this micro analysis, as as Scott said, it's like it's just analysing absolutely everything that our new signings do. It's like in every single game, and it's like you're just going to end up on a roller coaster where, like, one week you're just saying that that's like the next coming of whoever, and then the following week they'll be like massively disappointing because their form will be a little bit up and down until they establish a system. I do also agree with Scott that it doesn't seem to me that Beale's got, you know, a system that he seems to be particularly favouring or happy to play with. But then it's so early, it's really hard to say. But he has bought so many players in similar positions. Then you think, well, like, say if you take the number 10 role, for example, like it's clear to see that we've got far too many players in that position. You're not going to be able to give them all game time. And I don't know what the kind of the general plan is there, but at the same time, last season we were faced with, you know, having such severe shortages that it is nice to have a few different options. But no, yeah, the second half was night and day, and in terms of the goal, yeah, there were a few individual errors, and then there was also the sort of I saw quite a lot on Twitter about sort of criticising Tav's positioning. It's really difficult for the wing backs, I think, because the way that we're set up, like they are our only width, our only means of attacking out wide, our only outball out wide is Tav and Borna. So what do you want them to do? Hang back just in case we get broken, and then they won't be there. There'll be the moans and the groans because there's nobody there for Cantwell to play the ball out wide to. Or do they make these long busting runs up and then they can't get back? I think ultimately, we'll probably go on to talk about, you know, different ways of combating that and back threes and stuff. But I think the answer will ultimately, if we're going to continue with them, at least for this season, then we're going to have to give them more of a license to just stay up there and provide the cover, in my opinion, rather than trying to get them to do a mixture of the two, because it's just not fair, I don't think, and it's not going to work. Yeah, I've just sort of gone on a slight rant here. Do you want to bring things back round to whatever we were saying?
I think, Scott, I want to touch on something that Rich talks about in terms of taking the positives from. There's probably many people would probably see that there would be better Rangers teams in the past who would have found themselves a goal down in Europe and wouldn't have come back and played a second half the way that they did. Got a draw, which sees them through. Probably should have won the game and actually seen the game out pretty comfortably. I know Servette had a bit of late pressure and stuff like that. That tends to happen, but Butland really wasn't troubled. So I mean, I think Richie's right. I think we need to take the positives from that. You know, we've got to show that, you know, that there is something there, a bit of character shown within that team. Beale did talk, as Richie mentions, about having some home truths said in that dressing room. You know, the time that we were playing too deep, we were passive, we needed to get 15, 20 yards up further up the park. So there's positives to be taken there. And, you know, touching on some of the performances, you've mentioned Cantwell. I thought, again, another really, really strong performance from him. I think we can be quite excited about what we've seen from Cervantes so far in the short period of time. I think he's looked really, really good. And I thought second half, I thought Raskin was phenomenal. I thought the amount of ground that he covered, tracking back, winning tackles, carrying the ball and getting us further up the park. There's that incident in the second half where he's third favourite out of three, you know, two opposition players, and he comes away with the ball and actually gets us a foul that gets us up the park. I thought that I'm starting to see something in that kind of midfield three, and, you know, Raskin, Cantwell, Cervantes. That's quite an exciting mix for me.
Yeah, I mean, the three of them done really well, and I don't know if they had more license because Ryan Jack was in with them. I'm not sure, because they didn't really have to sit as much because Ryan Jack was there. My only feeling, I mean, listen, if a team is as bad as some people are saying it is, after being 1-0 down at half time, when they come back, the mentality when they've been there to come back, They'd have been shocked to bits, and they would have thought, we're not coming back here, but they didn't. They came out in the second half and performed the way they probably should have in the first half. But you never get that from a team you watch when we watch Rangers. You really get two performances roughly the same. It's just the level we're playing at, and it's just the way we've come back. Yeah, remember they keep saying Servette's not a great side, but you said, Stuart, in Champions League qualifier, every game in Europe's tough nowadays. You don't really get an easy game anymore. The days are long gone. And I remember under Walter Smith and when we had Laudrup and Gaza, Basel, Bully, we struggled against AK Athens and teams like that. Do you know what I mean? So it's no new. I mean, we performed really well in Europe in the last few years. It's just the league forums let us down. But I agree with Rich about Borna and Tav. I feel, listen, Borna and Tav to me give so much going forward. We all know that. But they can have really good games. But as soon as somebody does a slack pass or a missed challenge, they get lambasted for the rest of the game, no matter how well they do. I just feel, I don't know if we can go through a full season with the two of them running up and down the wing. I think they're going to, they're getting older. I think, I'm not saying Tav's lost a bit of pace, he's lost something. He doesn't like the same drive. I don't mean drive, but just dynamicism. He's not running forward as much and getting back because he is 31, 32. I mean, he's not going to be the same type of player he was 8 years ago when he first arrived. Quickness and stuff like that. So time catches up with everybody. So I feel they're more suited to sitting, like Rich maybe said, deep further up the park and putting the balls in because we all know they can deliver. We all know Tav likes the back post runs and they can chip in the goals. So maybe if we went to 3 at the back, it might suit us. But last night, you just have to think, like Tav said after the match, I watched his interview and he says, we weren't great. First half, we were really poor. Second half, we were better, but we still weren't, we still weren't at the level we should be. But the manager told us whatever we do, get the result to get through. And that's what they've done. The last time it was just about getting through. So I'm happy we get through. Yes, we all want to improve performance-wise. I think that'll come. The only thing is, because you're playing in Scotland and it's a kind of 2-horse league, you've not got that time to settle. So another draw or a defeat, the pitchforks will be out at Ibrox, but that's the nature of the beast, finishing second in Scotland. But I do think some of the new players have come in, and some of the way we played last night, I was actually quite impressed. Like you says, we upped our game. That interchange with Raskin and Campbell was really good. The Fuentes looks superb, by the way. I've never seen the guy play until he came into Rangers, so I couldn't tell you much about him. I thought he looked okay on Saturday, but last night it wasn't scared to do anything, go forward.
Yeah.
The ball he put in for Danilo, he missed. That's a great ball across the ball. You know what I mean? He whipped it across the front post, and I just think this boy is going to be a really good player for us. And I just think it's a back four Bill has to look at. He's got 3 guys there who've been there for a long time. He's got John Suter,
Scott,
who we know.
Let's talk about the back four then. And Richie, I mean, I'll just bring in. Paul's asked that question about. I didn't think it was a penalty. Did you think there was much?
I never seen it.
I know you didn't, Scott. I know it. But Richie, did you think there was much in that penalty shout? I thought. I don't think we got a really great angle of it either. Actually, I have to say on the coverage, but it wasn't one I was jumping out my seat for. I have to say.
No, I wasn't at the time either. Although I agree we didn't get the best angle of it, and there wasn't really a lot made of it, was there, during the coverage? Although I did notice there were quite a few people on our group chat that were talking about it, but it wasn't at the time. It wasn't one that I was thinking that's a shocker.
Yeah, but I would have taken it absolutely, but at that point in the game, Scott. Right, okay, let's talk about. Let's do the positive first of all, right? Okay, Tav, he didn't have a great game, but there he is again, popping up at the back post to get the goal that we needed, that gets us another £4.3 million into the coffers. I've always had a belief that Nacho Novo was probably the best pound for pound signing that Rangers ever had in terms of the goals that he scored against Celtic. Got us through Champions League, Red Star Belgrade, Cup final goals, the penalty Manchester. I think I'm now changing. I think Tav might well be the best pound for pound signing we've got, but he isn't playing well at the moment. I think that's fair enough to say. I think if you ask Tav, he would hold his hands up to say he's not playing well, but he gets that goal, and I can see the quandary that the manager could maybe be in. Yet he's the captain, and he does, even when he's not playing well, he pops up with that goal, and I can understand why the manager could be reluctant to see him out. But we have seen on the 2 occasions that Sterling has came onto the park that we've went to a 3 at the back. And it's allowed Tav to push further forward. It's Borna. And a quick word for Borna. I thought he had again a fairly decent game, and that is a wonderful cross that he's put in. I mean, it's absolutely magnificent for Tav. 3 at the back keeps getting mentioned. I think I've said myself, I'm unsure about 3 at the back domestically, just because I don't think teams we play against, particularly at Ibrox, or even away from home, let's be honest, other than probably Celtic, sometimes they don't have anybody up front. So do we need that? But I can certainly see that in maybe European games, having that extra protection on our flanks could be useful. What's your thoughts? Are you edging that way? And I think you've been kind of maybe something that you would have liked to have seen more of, but maybe Sterling's injuries just prevented that.
I always said when signing Ben Davis, I thought we were going 3 at the back anyway, because that's Ben's preferred position. And I know a lot of people don't like it. I just feel it would suit us the way we're playing, especially with our 2 fullbacks. You have to give the 2 fullbacks, you have to play to their strengths if you're going to keep them on the side. Now, we've not got a lot of players out there who come in for Tav and gives us what Tav's got. Yeah, he might be a better defender, but will he create enough? Will he score? That takes a lot away for the team. Borner's as well. Borner's defensively can be poor. We know his back post marking's not the greatest at times, and he's a bit of a shitbag in tackles. But going forward, with the ball he put in for Tav the other night, you don't really get that for anybody else on the side, because that's the way he whips the ball in, and Tav knows he's making the ball, so Tav makes that run because he said that I know Borner gets the ball, I know where to go. So do you push him for a part like Rich mentioned, and then you're taking away don't have to come back as much, you just stay for it. It gives us more width throughout the game, and you bring in an extra defender. So when the 2 centre backs do spread out to cover the wings, I've got somebody in the centre, because when they do that, when they 2 push up, that's where the space comes. So it take away the space for teams to attack into. It would mean you take somebody out for the middle or front. That's the only thing. You'd have to take somebody away for that. And I'm not sure who we take, because obviously you want to keep the midfield 3. You've got to keep Raskin, Eventes, and Campbell. So you'd have to go away either just 2 up front with Danilo and Dessers. And I don't know if that would work unless Campbell just makes runs off him, or you go with somebody else beside him, maybe Lammers and Danilo or whatever. But I think it's a way to go, and I think the SPL will be fine, because I think teams might come to us more, because I think when they're playing 3 at the back. But you don't have to play 3 centre backs all the time. You could put one of your midfielders in there as against certain teams, but against better teams you put your 3 centre backs in. I just feel we're more solid. I feel we're going to be a long season if we're asking Borna and Tav to run up and down the flanks every game, because I feel they're getting on and they will make mistakes because they're having to do that. But if I just concentrate on what they're good at, we'll get the best out of them.
Just on the comment about whether the PSV game will be on TV, I'd be amazed if TNT Sports don't start taking it from now on. I don't think they're really that interested in the early qualifiers, but I've got more of an interest on when it gets to the final qualifying round. So I've not seen if that's confirmed, but that's from memory, that's what happened last year. It was on BT Sport Report, which is now TNT Sport. Richie, what's your view on 3 in the back? Is it an inevitability that we'll see that with Sterling being brought there? I know we've chatted before about Sterling, that you've got a feeling that he wasn't just bought as someone who was going to take Tav's position, i.e. as a right back. You think he was actually bought for another reason, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite there's a lot of sides that I like watching that play 3 at the back, and they play in a very offensive, progressive manner. So I don't see any reason why we can't. On Sterling, I've saw quite a bit of him at Blackpool and Stoke. It doesn't strike me as a player that could be a sort of natural replacement for Tav. He's not in that mould of a progressive wing back that we see. He'd be far better suited to the right-hand side of a 3, I think. And that's where we've seen him when he's featured so far this season. So, I'm inclined to think that that's where he's more likely to be played. And it takes away this sort of debate about when's Tav going to be rested, if ever, when will Sterling get an opportunity. It means that they could both play in the same team. So it's there's a few ways of doing it. So you could have like where we've seen Lundstrom at the base of a diamond, dropping back into to make a 3 when we don't have the ball, or you can have 3 sort of central defenders. Everyone complains about having the 3, which you could call it a 5 in essence, but it's not, because your wing backs essentially very rarely leave the halfway line, even when you don't have the ball. So because we've got players like Suter, who we know can drive forward, we could have like Goldson, Suter and Sterling, for example, with Suter driving the ball forward that way, in the same way that you'd expect like Jack or Lundstrom if they were dropping back. Because I don't actually think, like, if it's all well and good to think of like Lundstrom and Jack as being a slightly more attacking option and dropping back when we haven't got the ball, but what really is their kind of output that would be really meaningful if we were trying to mount an attack? So I don't really sort of have too much of a problem with playing sort of 3 defenders in that sort of central role, as long as we're playing a sort of progressive style of play. It also brings into play Ben Davies, which, like, depending on your persuasion, may or may not be a good thing. He would be very suited on the left hand side of a 3 as well, far more suited than playing in a back 2, which he doesn't. We've seen that there's been issues with some of his performances and not looking particularly comfortable. He's not really played in sort of central defence in a 2 much in his career, so I think he'd be far more suited to that side as well. And crucially, as Kerr said, like, having that 3 gives Borna and Tav license to do what they do best, which is excellent delivery into the box and not having to, like, they can't be getting up and down. We've seen that Tav finds himself increasingly out of position when he's looking to defend. Borna has like very little confidence when he's defending, but then when he's moving forward, playing a 1-2, putting a ball into the box, he looks like a different player who's just doing it far more naturally. So it's like we need to work to these players' attributes. And like Beale said it after the game yesterday, like there aren't really many wing backs that that can play that way and have that kind of consistency of delivery. We do need to make sure that that's not our only method of attack, though, because that can get very predictable if it's just like try and find your out ball onto the wing and then wait for a ball to be pumped into the middle of the park. I think that can become quite easy to defend. But yeah, as long as we're mixing that up with some sort of central play, which we've seen when everybody was complaining about having no width, if we can do a bit of the 2, then I think that will work much better. In theory, at least. Like these things are great to talk about and work through in theory, aren't they? But we're not dealing with robots.
Yeah, I think Sterling's injury during pre-season is I'm sure we might have seen it before now. I think particularly in one of the pre-season or a few of the pre-season games, we might have seen him do that. So it'll be, I think that was a disappointment, obviously, that he picked up that injury. But yeah, I can certainly see. And look, it's nice to have the option. We've got the players that I think can fit that formation. So it'll be interesting to see how that works. Let's just move on then. I mean, obviously we've got a game in between, but as we've been talking about Europe, let's have a bit of a chat about PSV, Kerr, in terms of, look, it's going to be tough. They took care of Sturm Graz pretty easily. I seen parts of the first leg. And they look very good. They look as if they've got a lot of pace, particularly up top. Yeah. There are rumours that they might be about to lose a couple of players. In terms of potentially one going to Bayern Munich, Everton are supposedly in for someone else. That would obviously help.
Yep.
You know, because that would unsettle them. They've brought in Malik Tillman. We know all about him. I think I seen on Tillman's social media though that, you know, he posted last week that I think it was the first time he's been on the pitch for about 3 months. So I'm not entirely convinced how up to speed he would be in terms of potentially playing. But I tend to agree with Richie. I mean, I think I'm more relaxed about us playing PSV than I was about us playing Servette, for a strange reason. Maybe that's because, look, we were the favourites against Servette, and rightly
Yeah.
so. I think against PSV, when you get to these knockout games, 9 times out of 10, you're going to come up against a really good side. And it is pretty much a toss of the coin. You know, it's 180 minutes. Who sees it comes out top? It was a tight affair against them last season. But I do tend to agree with Richie that I don't think it should be all doom and gloom, and maybe actually playing a team with the better quality like PSV, does that suit us better?
It does, because you know yourself, you have to raise your game. I think sometimes you play a team that you're reading about, or people are hearing people saying or whatever, because a lot of players are all on social media and stuff, read the papers, whatever. This should be an easier victory for Rangers. I'm not saying they think it, but it might seep into their mind. Do you know what I mean? They might think this isn't going to be as hard as we thought, but when you look at PSV, you'll think, well, we struggled last season. We got through, but it was tough. Both games are tough against them. They were a good side, and they had a lot of chances. They missed a lot of chances, and then obviously we scored over there. But I just think it'll be tough. I think we need to win our home leg and go over there with some confidence. Listen, I don't mind playing good teams like that, because we know ourselves. Rangers have done it in the past year, but they've raised their game against quality opposition. Obviously, during the Champions League, we never, because that was a different level of opposition. But we've raised our game before against teams better than PSV. But it will be tough. But I'm looking forward to it. I think last night and then last week, as a team, even some of the fans probably thought we should beat this team. But like I said earlier, it's no easy game in Europe. Doesn't matter who you're playing, you can't think it's a formality you're going to go through. You have to go into the park and do it. And we've done it last night eventually. But I think next week, I'm looking forward to the game. It will be tough, because they're a good side. Technically, they're very good. You say they're quick, they're dynamic. They'll probably create chances. So every player's going to have to play well. But we've got a good chance of them. I think we'll be favourites at home, and they'll be favourites at home. And it's just obviously see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, Richie, I think the key for us is, first game at Ibrox, we still need to be in the tie. Obviously, when we go over to Eindhoven, I think there was. They scored the opening goal. We came right back into it last time in 2-1, and then they kind of got a late equaliser. And I think there was a bit of doom and gloom, but actually we were still well in the tie, and that's going to be the most important thing. That we've got a really, really good history against PSV Eindhoven throughout the years. Actually, going way back even to the 70s, we've had a really good performance level against them. So, if we're still in the tie, if we can get even, lead would be absolutely brilliant. But I don't think, if we're still level, then I still think that's a positive result. Do you feel playing at home first is actually better for Rangers, or would you rather the away leg? How do you feel about that?
Yeah,
does that matter anymore now that away goals are not really a thing? How do we feel about that?
It matters less. I mean, it's interesting because, like, for the Servette game, I was really pleased that we were at Ibrox first and had the opportunity to lay down a marker, at least in theory, before going to their place. With this one, I think there's pros and cons for both. Ultimately, it's a tie that we've got to relish, and something that we should all be looking forward to. That the doom and gloom merchants will suggest that they're an excellent team playing really well at the moment and we don't stand a chance. But I don't think that's the case. It's not to say that they should be underestimated, and I think they do probably deserve slight favoritism. I don't gamble, but if I did, I'd think that we'd be worth a go as a slight underdog if in fact we are. But they're really they're dangerous. We could do with them sort of shipping a couple of players out before the game, as you mentioned. They've got some real threats, and actually they do sort of, their style of play is to get the ball out wide and to feed De Jong. So that it's if we're talking about our fullbacks and how our defensive unit's likely to fare, I think it's fair to say that they're going to be tested on Tuesday night, and it's going to be important. Like we were saying earlier on, like Beale talking about these passive periods of play. Like we won't get away with having a considerable time of sort of being particularly passive. I think a team like PSV will be able to take advantage of that. Having said that, if we play the way that we know that we can, and if we can sort of get control of the game and nullify their strengths, then there's no reason why we can't we can't go through. And worst case scenario, we know that we're into the Europa League knockouts anyway, which personally, without sounding overly defeatist, after last year in the Champions League, for me it wouldn't be the worst thing at all to have a good go at the Europa. But yeah, I'm just really looking forward to the game. It's a real opportunity to see exactly where this side are at, because I think they might well sort of raise their game, a lot of them against quality opposition, and we will have Campbell will have opportunities. We'll be able to get players into space if we can play the ball quickly and we can play a little bit further up the pitch than we were against Servette. So yeah, let's see exactly where this team are at on Tuesday, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a valid point. PSV are not going to come to Ibrox and play with a low block.
No.
They're going to come. They'll want to get goals. They want to try and win the tie and take a positive result back to Eindhoven. That could absolutely work in our favour, because I do believe that we've got a front five or so now who can damage teams. I think we need to be more clinical. I think we've seen that just in about every game that we've played so far, even the pre-season friendlies. We need to be more clinical. We need to start putting away some of these chances. But I still think we would get them. Scott, then we'll maybe just have a really look ahead. Obviously, on the site there'll be more coming up with regards to the League Cup game at the weekend. I mean, if Michael Beale could have handpicked, and maybe he did, maybe he had something to do with the extra hot ball or whatever like that was put into the wee bowl. But if he's had some sort of influence that, or if it is just fate, it's just a random draw, imagine that. But if he could have picked a game in between playing in the sweltering heat of Geneva and then a Champions League knockout game qualified against PSV at Ibrox, it would be a home draw against a lower league opposition. I know you and Lee had a bit of a chat about this, and I've seen some people chatting in the comments. I'm kind of torn between two things here. I think the players put a lot of effort into last night, and I think it was very warm by all accounts, well in the 30s when Wilf was over there, said it was absolutely roasting. You could see at the end the effort that the players had put in. So I can understand that there might be a need, depending on how they recover, to maybe rest some players. But is there still a need to maybe keep a really strong 11 to let players still get used to and start making those relationships? How do you see it going?
I mean, to be honest with you, all the new guys that's coming in the door, you should be playing, at least taking part somewhere, because they need the minutes, they need to gel, and this is a decent game for maybe Danilo to get another one, or Dessers to get one, and you link up more, because they're still playing for fitness, so another game under the belt will help them. Seamer's the same, Lammers, I mean, Sterling these games, so these are the type of guys I don't think he'll make too many changes. I can get he might rest maybe Aventes because he came off with cramp, didn't he? Maybe give him a rest, because obviously he's been on a flew in not long ago and he's played a couple of games. Ryan Jack might be rested. Maybe bring in Lundstrom, I'm not sure. Or I might just keep Raskin in there with Campbell, or even give Diller a run. Listen, I don't think he'll make a lot of change. I don't think he has to this early in the season. I think he just needs to give guys more minutes in their lives to get them up to speed. And obviously the keeper just is in for me. Don't waste the keeper. The keeper doesn't do a lot anyway. And I know he made a few saves, Jack Butland, but he's not played a lot of football in the last couple of years. A game against Morton, like I said this morning, is not going to affect him either way. So I just think he has to kind of keep his strongest side he can. Obviously, maybe one or two exceptions. And I know people say we don't want players get injured. it's early in the season now. Morton's got Alan Power right enough, so maybe that'll come into the equation because we know what he's like. But no, I think he keeps his strongest side possible, especially guys who know a lot of game time but are just in the door. Like I said, Desser's more run out time, Danilo, and just go for it and play it as a game, because the more games we play together, the more they gel, get to know each other. So I wouldn't make too many changes if I was Michael Beale.
Richie, where are you on this? Are you want to see Danilo and Dessers, etc., getting more game time to maybe get some goals, build the confidence, or are you more in the line that you would maybe like to see, like a Hadji, etc., get his opportunity? Or are we going to be somewhere in between? What's your thought process?
Yeah, I'm somewhere similar to Kerr, I think, on it. It seems like too good an opportunity to give the team another opportunity to start putting things in the right direction. Like, we've seen glimpses across all of the games aside from Killy, and it's obvious the way that Beale's talking after all these games that things are still sort of being worked on. I don't think he'll kind of pass up on this opportunity by playing a second 11 that's not necessarily going to feature in any of our bigger games. I could see Dowell getting a start because he's impressed when he's played. He had a decent preseason, but he hasn't necessarily had very much game time in the last couple of games. There was talk of Ridvan being back, so I'm sure if he is, then he'll play some part. Sterling might well play for Tav, although I wouldn't be surprised if Tav plays again just to try and get into some kind of form. And for the reasons that I said earlier on about, like, Sterling, I don't think can play in Tav's position unless we're setting up much more defensively. And we might see Lundstrom as well, which some people may or may not want. But I'm looking at Kerr there. But I just think that's the reality. He wasn't able to travel to Switzerland, and it might just be that if he's wanting to give that sort of midfield trio a little rest. I don't know. I haven't heard anything on Cifuentes, whether it was cramp or he seemed to be grimacing.
It looked like cramp to me. I think even just the way they were stretching, it did look like cramp. Hopefully,
so it might well be that there's an opportunity to give him a rest as well. But what I'd really like to see is somewhere close to a pretty strong side playing for about 60 minutes, and then if we've got the game wrapped up, then there's an opportunity to give some other players some exposure, because as Kerr said on the sort of Daily Rabble earlier on today, there's no use playing anybody that's not in your plans. There's absolutely, and we've got an idea of Beale's plans based on the players that he's used so far and the players that he hasn't. Only he really knows that. But the likes of Hadji, it doesn't seem to me that he's anywhere near this, like, the top of the list of thousands of number 10s that we've got. So if that's the case, there's there's no use playing him at all. It doesn't do anything for getting us ready for the bigger games in the season. So yeah, hopefully there'll be people get that need them will get some more minutes. There'll be a bit more confidence. We'll be a little bit further on going on to Tuesday night, and maybe some of the youth players might have an opportunity as well. It would be nice to see Rice getting a cameo at some stage. Yeah, I think that's about right. Where are you at with it, Stuart? Are you similar?
Yeah, well, I was thinking about it today. I mean, if you actually think about it, he could actually just have a completely different 11 if he really wanted to. That we have got quite a big squad. So when you do think about King, Balogun, Sterling, Ridvan if he's back, obviously you've got McCrory there. You could change your completely your back five, and then you're moving in, like you say, Dowell, etc., and Lundstrom, etc., could easily come in. I do like the idea of maybe more of a I think the forward players getting more game time and gelling. I can imagine like Danilo and Dessers kind of split the game yesterday. I don't imagine either of them is particularly fatigued after that. So, you know, you could see them absolutely playing. I can imagine Goldson might start. I think Goldson looks as if he actually needs games, to me. I thought he came on as the game progressed last night. I thought he got better. He put in some really good clearing headers towards the end, but I thought he was a bit ropey at the start. So I can definitely see him maybe playing and maybe giving Suter a break, actually, because Suter's played a lot of football, you know, and a number of games in a particular short period of time. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll obviously find out more when the manager speaks over the press conferences over the coming days. We'll call it quits there, guys. Like you say, just a short pod. We appeared on YouTube. That was unexpected for us that we're on tonight. But yeah, thanks for everybody that's joined and watched and added some of the comments. Really appreciated. All that's left for me is Richie. Thanks very much for joining us.
Cheers, Stuart. Yeah, enjoyed that.
And Scott, a pleasure as always, mate.
No bother, Stuart. Thank you.
And thanks everybody for watching. And yeah, we'll speak to you again on Rabble Extra next week.